I was 2 streets away when Mom's name lit up on my phone. The text was short and cold. Don't come. My stomach dropped like a stone. I had expected a little drama, not a clear order. I pulled into the gravel drive because leaving would feel like admitting what they had already decided, that I did not matter. I stepped up to the porch and could hear laughter inside. The door opened and Mom smiled the way she always had at guests. Really, you should go, she said politely. The polite voice felt like a knife. The room went quiet the second I paused on the threshold. Someone behind her laughed like they were watching a trap close. The sound made my cheeks burn. I turned to leave, humiliated, but then I heard a lock click that I did not expect. Something slid from the hallway shelf and bumped my shoe. I looked down and saw an envelope. It had my maiden name written on it in clear, typed letters. My hand shook when I picked it up. The paper felt heavier than it looked. I had no idea what it would contain, but I knew it mattered. I stood there, envelope in hand, while the door stayed open like a stage. The envelope had weight. I eased the flap and pulled out a typed sheet. It was a list with dates and small bank transfers, names I knew and names I did not. My heart sped when I read the first line. It said, "Remove beneficiary. Tess." I could not believe someone had planned to erase me. Inside the house someone swore. A cousin I barely spoke to waved his hand and said, "Throw it away. It's nothing." But I had read the line. The injustice burned hot in my chest. I walked away without yelling. I did not want to make a scene that would give them the satisfaction. I hid in the shadows by the kitchen window and watched. Mom ripped at a document while the new man in her life stood over her like a puppeteer. He was calm and controlling, the sort of man who used small actions to move big things. Through the glass I saw him place a phone on the counter. He tapped it and then hit delete. The screen read a file name. Proof. He swiped and the file was gone. My throat went dry. Someone inside saw me. A woman mouthed one word to me through the glass. The word was hide. I took the Polaroid out of the rosebush like it was a secret that would burn my fingers. The photo was old and warm at the edges. I was 7, grinning with chocolate on my face. Mom had her arm around a man I had never seen before. On the back in faded ink was a name. The name matched the one on the typed list. My brain tried to fit the pieces together. My mother had always told stories about our past, but never about this man. The house paperwork listed him as a trustee. That was wrong. I had been told years ago the house belonged to Mom alone. Standing in the dusk, I felt don't come become more than cruelty. It sounded like a warning to keep away from a secret. I called an old friend who could recover deleted files. He said he would try. I waited on a bench in the park until the sky went purple. When I walked by the kitchen window later, the man inside looked straight at me. He mouthed one slow word with clear fear in his eyes. Hide. I did not know why he looked scared, but I understood. Something else inside the house wanted to stay hidden. Jana lived 3 houses down and watched our family like a slow movie. She kept bird feeders and gossip in equal measure. I knocked on her screen door and she shuffled me inside between jars and newspaper clippings. "You don't usually visit," she said, pouring coffee. I handed her the Polaroid and the typed paper. Her mouth fell open. She did not hide surprise well. She rummaged in a drawer and pulled out a manila folder. Clacked on the table. Inside were utility bills, odd receipts, and a notarized copy of a will dated wrong. The will's date was suspicious. It was signed after Mom's hospital stay. The signature did not match Mom's normal handwriting. Jana leaned in close, her voice low. "He's been stealing from her," she said. I felt like I had walked into swamp water. The more I learned, the deeper the mess. Jana had lived on that street for decades. She knew when things shifted. She squinted at the ledger and pointed. There was a forged signature on the deed dated the month I had left town for work abroad. Her hand trembled a little when she said the name of the trustee out loud. I knew that this was not just a small family fight. Someone had been changing papers and moving money quietly. Proof was what I needed. Angry feelings did not win courts or banks. My friend at the lab offered a way. He said a DNA kit could tie names to a family line and show whether the trustee belonged in our story. I did not like asking for help, but I needed the truth. I ordered a test under a fake name and mailed it myself. The tracking number flashed on my phone. The package left town and then, strangely, seemed to disappear. It was marked as delivered to an address 2 blocks from my mother's house. Delivery showed a photo to prove it. When I tapped it, my stomach fell. The hand in the picture was the same hand I had seen on the kitchen counter the night of the dinner. I did not know who else to trust, so I sat in my car and called Jana. She answered and then went quiet. I checked my voicemail later. There was a clipped message I did not like. A voice said, "We don't like people poking around." It was short and flat. Fear moved through me like cold water. Someone was watching my moves. They had also watched the tracking. The game had become dangerous. The knock came late that night. My uncle stood on my doorstep like a ghost from a story I had not read yet. He smelled of cigarettes and old coffee, but his eyes were sharp. He pressed a manila envelope into my hands. He had been a whistleblower once and then vanished into silence. He had seen a ledger and it had a name I did not want to see. Inside the envelope was a copy of a bank transfer to an offshore account. The account name matched the trustee's alias. My uncle did not like doing this. He said, "She's been paying him to keep quiet." I stared at the numbers. They were big enough to buy a small house. My chest hurt in a new way. On the top of the ledger, scribbled in a shaky hand, was something else. It was a scrawl of a name. My sister's name. The same sister who had texted me earlier, who had laughed in the hallway. The thought that she might have typed "Don't come" hit me like a blow. My uncle swore he had no reason to lie. He told me to be careful. The ledger proved money moved. The silence around it had weight. I found my sister in the grocery aisle like it was a planned meeting. She put on the small polished smile she used for neighbors and family. Up close she seemed all calm, like pond water covering deeper roots. I asked her about the ledger and the typed message. She did not get startled. Instead, she looked at me like she had a speech prepared. She recited the story they had fed the family for years. Drama, my supposed ruin, how she wanted stability for Mom. Her voice was smooth. She mentioned a safety deposit box number as if it were a secret only she kept. Then she laughed. I felt cold. I dropped the small envelope with the bank receipt from my pocket without making a show of it. The receipt had the bank's logo. She stooped to help me pick it up, and did not notice the ledger photocopy tucked beneath it. She left in a shimmer of perfume and pretense. I stood between the cereal and the chips and understood a new fact. The family story might be a plan to move money and erase me. I felt alone and fired up at the same time. A friend who worked in the bank agreed to look for me quietly. He could not break rules, but he could notarize a request to see the box if I had standing. I filed the paperwork. When the request went in, something odd happened. The bank flagged the account. Someone inside had tried to clean files that very day. That cold feeling in my stomach hardened into fear. They were organized. This was not a few nasty cousins gossiping. It smelled like a cleaning operation. That night, I found a paper taped to my apartment door. It was a civil summons. Someone had accused me of trespass at the reunion. I had not been to the reunion yet. The paper was a warning. My hands shook when I read the name of the plaintiff. The name was connected to the trustee's new company. They were moving fast and quietly. They tried to make me look like the troublemaker. But I had more questions than answers now. I had to stop letting them control the story. The attacks went online next. A private account I did not know started posting old photos of me with ugly captions. The post called me a family deserter. Replies flooded in from accounts that had been silent before. I could have let it tear me down. Instead, I looked at the data. The IP trail led back to a phone registered to the trustee's company. This smear was not random. It was deliberate. They used bots and fake replies to make it look like the town agreed with them. Then an anonymous message showed up in my inbox. It had a photo of the Polaroid I had hidden under the rosebush in one sentence. "Nice try. We know you have this." The message felt like a slap. My photographer friend called and told me she had been paid off to lose negatives of family photos. The more I pushed, the more they pushed back. They had money and reach. I had a photo and a ghost of evidence. The fight had to be smart. I kept collecting evidence. The uncle and the bank friend worked together to pull redacted copies of checks. The checks showed years of payments to a security consultant. Each amount was enough to make me dizzy. One check had a scribbled memo in Mom's handwriting. It mentioned the very date of the reunion invitation. That line changed everything. It meant the money was tied to the event where they told the family to keep me out. When I went to photograph the check, the photographer who had been paid to lose negatives insisted she had lost the best images. I felt tricked and furious. It was clear the trustee had set a pattern. He called the payments protection. The word made me sick. The town had been feeding him from Mom's account for years. I understood then that the fight would add a legal angle. They would not stop until a court told them to. I could see why they had tried to erase me. I would not let them do it easily. I followed another thread and found a charity registered 3 years ago. It claimed to help local families, but it paid out little. A large donation from Mom's account had gone to a number the trustee owned. I brought it up casually at the next family dinner. I watched him change color when he heard the charity's name. He stood and accused me of slander and called the sheriff. The sheriff walked in like the sky had opened and closed. They wanted to check my ID and calm the room. At that moment my lawyer called. He had filed an emergency subpoena on the deposit box. The sheriff paused and glanced around. The trustee tried to look calm, but his eyes jumped at the word subpoena. The table trembled with tension. The legal notice gave us leverage. I had to keep my voice steady and my head cool. I was ready to open the box if the court let me. I wanted proof, not drama. The bank called us in under court supervision. The deposit box was heavy with papers and old things. Inside was an old folded will leaving everything to me. It was dated before the trustee appeared. Next to it was a newer notarized document naming the trustee as beneficiary of caretaking funds. The newer one looked official, but it did not feel right. The older will had a fingerprint smudge that did not match the newer will. That detail suggested replacement, not amendment. My lawyer photographed every item. As we worked, the bank manager quietly slid an envelope across the table. It was a letter in Mom's handwriting. The paper trembled in my hands. It read, "I am scared." I did as he asked. The words were raw and small. I felt the ground shift under me. This was not simply bad legal paperwork. It was a scared woman trying to survive. The notes, the wills, the checks, all of it began to tell a story of fear and force. I could feel the weight of proof pressing down like a hammer. The letter made my blood run hot. I went back to the house with my uncle. We demanded answers. On the attic stairs, a box of tapes slid and spilled. They were labeled in Mom's neat script. We took them and recorded the sound on my phone. Mom's voice was trembling. She talked about promises and threats. Her words wrapped around the name of the trustee. One tape had another voice. Someone telling her to keep to the story. The voice ordered her like she was a child. At the end of the tape, Mom whispered my name and begged, "Please don't come." Her voice broke. My throat tightened. I put the phone down and felt dizzy. The tapes were proof of coercion, more solid than a rumor. I needed to make sure the evidence would stand up in court. But first I had to protect the tapes and find more proof. The house felt colder after we listened. The shadows seemed to hold secrets. The community center had a locker Mom used long ago. It had been paid for years but closed last month. I went to the center with court papers and asked for the records. The file showed the locker key was scanned out by a man who once bullied me in school. He now did odd jobs for the trustee. When I confronted him, his hands shook. He handed me a thumb drive. He had been paid to forget about it. The drive showed a video of the trustee and Mom arguing in the living room. The camera angle was careful and deliberate. Someone else had filmed and placed the camera to catch faces and reactions. It looked like a staged scene. The brother of the trustee appeared in the footage. He moved with a familiarity that made my skin crawl. The brother adjusted family photos and placed a folder under the trustee's arm. The video was a puzzle piece. All the rest of the pieces started to match when I watched it. Word leaked despite the care we took. At a block barbecue, I was called a thief in front of family. A cousin posted the fight online within minutes. The world felt small and cruel. But the neighbor with the porch camera gave me a USB stick. The footage showed the trustee leaving the house late on the night the DNA kit was logged delivered. The neighbor had saved every clip. In the video, a second person carried a brown envelope away from the porch. The envelope looked like the ones Mom used for bills. The neighbor swore she recognized the person. Her voice shook when she said the name. The trustee's brother. The footage showed the brother moving easily around the property. He was not an outsider. He knew where things were kept and where the cameras pointed. The neighbor had been wary of him for months. The video gave me a way to show the court the choreography of the theft. The brown envelope in the brother's hands tied a neat little knot on the evidence string. I watched the footage over and over until the pixels blurred. The brother's jawline matched old family portraits. He moved with a comfort in the house that only someone close would have. He placed the thick folder into the trustee's arms. The folder looked heavy. The brother even adjusted a framed childhood photo, so my face would not show to the camera. It was like someone staging a play. When I froze one frame and blew it up, I saw a reflection in the glass. It was my sister. She had been at the window and she looked terrified. Her expression was not the polished anger she had shown in public. It was fear. That small detail made me look at her differently. The staging now looked like a plan to discredit me and erase my rights. It was not a slick outsider job. It was an inside job made by people who knew where to place things and how to hide prints. The plan had been tidy and cruel. I sent a tease online. The post hinted at a reveal and asked the town to watch. It went out at the prime family watching hour. The response was immediate. Whispered calls, returned messages, and the trustee's PR team calling it attention-seeking. He hit back with legal threats and a piece about family privacy. They labeled me a mercenary. The attack looked like a map of panic. I felt like a small bird attacked by a storm. A journalist reached out and wanted to meet. She warned me she needed chain of custody to go public. She wanted more than family stories. She wanted proof so hard that courts would stand up. The pressure was sharp. It was good. It forced me to do things by the book. I met the reporter at a coffee shop with boxes of notarized copies and timestamps. The journalist listened and frowned. She told me the story had potential, but only if we could prove each step of the evidence trail. That demand calmed me. It meant truth might have a real chance. The reporter introduced me to a civil rights attorney who had fought elder coercion cases before. He agreed to take the case pro bono if I could hand over chain of custody documents. I walked into the newsroom with boxes of notarized copies, time-stamped footage, the uncle's ledger, and lab chain papers for the DNA kit. The lawyer examined everything with a careful hand. He said we needed a living witness who could say they saw coercion. Jana agreed, but only if we could protect her from revenge. She had watched and waited too long. We planned carefully. The lawyer filed emergency motions to preserve all evidence and to protect Jana. I felt like we were building a net to catch them. The attorney said the case could change things for other families too. That idea lifted me. I was not just fighting for myself. I might stop someone from doing this to another mother and child. We prepared for a showdown that felt like a courtroom drama. We planned the reunion like a sting. Invitations went to every family member, and 2 reporters under the cover of a family mediation dinner. My sister RSVP'd with a mocking note. Inside I kept a quiet countdown. The lawyer filed emergency notices to preserve evidence. Jana agreed to come and testify if we could hide her identity in court. The night of the dinner, Mom texted me again. "Please, they're watching. Don't make it worse," she wrote. My chest burned. I slipped into the room with the lawyer and the reporter. My hands did not shake when I sat at the table. The trustee raised his glass and toasted my absence from family life. The journalist clicked a recording device. The click sounded loud in my bones and comforted me. We had witnesses and a reporter at the table. I felt the shift. The trustee tried to keep the air light, but his smile was brittle. I kept my voice steady. The lawyer signaled to me with his eyes. The plan was in motion. The lawyer began a slideshow of chain of custody images. He showed timestamps, sealed envelopes, and delivery logs. The trustee scoffed and called it theatrics. The photos did not laugh. The journalist announced she had the DNA lab on standby for live verification. My pulse raced as every eye turned to me. I stood up and said, "This is why I came." The trustee moved as if to run and grab the press recorder. A nephew, someone who cared about truth, blocked the doorway. The lab phoned in to confirm their digital signature matched the sample I had mailed weeks ago. The room held its breath. The lawyer played a tape of Mom's voice from the attic as well. Her words floated in the room and wrapped the people in silence. The trustee's face lost color. For a moment the house felt like it could crack open and show everything inside. The proof mattered. Did its work. The lab results were clear. The trustee's alias matched a family line tied to the house. The DNA placed him not as an innocent outsider, but as someone with a claimed relation framed as truth. He had built a story and then used it to control Mom. The room watched him shrink. A backup video played. In it, the trustee coached Mom to sign a new will while his brother filmed from an angle that captured her hands. The family's laughter turned to a hush so deep you could hear the clock. Mom's hand trembled as she reached for a glass and then broke down. She cried in a way that sounded like relief and shame mixed. What she said next surprised me. She did not simply admit to fear. She revealed a secret about Dad that he had kept private. It was a detail so small and so old that I had not expected it to come up. She had been terrified we might lose Dad's memory or his name if she resisted. The revelation made the room tilt. Mom sobbed and told the story in pieces. He had shown her doctored bank statements and threatened to expose an old secret about Dad. She had been scared to death. Her fear made her do things she hated. She said she had signed papers because he promised to protect Dad's reputation. Then she did something stranger. She named a powerful neighbor as someone who had been close to the trustee for years. The neighbor who smiled through dinner froze. Her smile dropped and she said she needed a lawyer. The trustee lunged for his phone to call for help. The lawyer reached across the table and slid the phone into a high-security pouch with a court-hold label. Felt like a small victory. The trustee's network began to crack as people learned his web included old friends and a powerful neighbor. I watched faces change from loyalty to fear. The room felt raw and real. Mom's confession cleared a strange fog. It showed why she had been trapped and why she had begged me not to come. When the trustee's web began to unravel, my sister's face changed. Triumph melted into calculation. She had been complicit to keep valuables safe. Now she wanted survival. She offered a list of other transfers in exchange for immunity from immediate prosecution. The lawyer took the list on the condition she signed records over to the press and the bank. She signed. Her hands were steady but her eyes shifted like someone hoping to bargain for air. She tried one last move. She demanded a percentage of any restitution as a cost of silence. The room leaned in. I felt fury and a strange pity. Then the neighbor who had looked proud earlier stood up and said two words that cut the air. I recorded. The neighbor produced a clear recording of the trustee admitting he had profited from Mom's fear. That tape was like a match to the dry wood. The lawyer negotiated. The trustee would face civil suits and criminal referral. The bank moved to freeze accounts. Restitution was on the table. Felt like justice was possible. The recording from the neighbor proved the threats and the profit. We did not humiliate people for the joy of it. The lawyer arranged a mediated apology and a restitution plan. The trustee would be evaluated and barred from financial control over Mom. He would face civil suits. The bank signed papers to freeze suspicious accounts and to flag transfers. Mom, raw and ashamed, agreed to therapy and to sign power of attorney to an independent trustee. Felt right. I did not want to watch a scene of revenge. I wanted safety and truth. We planned a public apology and a path to rebuild the money. The lawyer pressed for a statement that would warn other families about the signs of elder abuse. The trustee agreed to the terms quietly because he had little choice. After the press left and the room settled, my sister squeezed my hand and whispered, "So what now?" Her tone was soft and uncertain. I did not have a full answer. I knew we had to repair what we could and teach what we had learned. The court closed the civil case. Funds were returned to the estate. The trustee lost control of the house. The new paperwork put the property into a protective trust with me on the oversight committee. That was a practical victory. The real win was something else. The network I built, neighbors, a journalist, a pro bono lawyer, stayed together. Other families reached out to say, "This happened to us too." I used the viral article and the footage to start a community group that offered legal resources and training for elder exploitation. Views turned into donations and calls for help. People thanked me for starting a place to fight back. Months later, as I locked the house and looked at the quiet yard, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I did not expect read, "I'm proud of you." It was signed in Dad's handwriting. My uncle had found it in a safe deposit box and saved it for the day I walked back through the door. I stood in the dark and let the truth breathe. Family silence had been broken. It was not perfect, but it was honest. That would have to be enough.